A great episode of 60 Minutes last night. If I can get through this without messing this up, I will look like I've been to school. But we heard about a radical new approach to education that's gaining some momentum here in Australia. It's called unschooling. Now, this is where children are taught at home about whatever they want, whenever they want. There's no curriculum. But is this really setting kids up for life in the real world? So former teacher and parent of three, Sandra Dodd, says it's worked for her children. She joins us now. And David Zingia from Monash University. Sandra, let's go to you first. And thank you for joining us this morning. You've got three kids. They're all in their 20s. They were, as this is said, unschooled. So take me through your process about how you unschooled your kids, and did they like it at first?
Each had a choice as they came to school age, and the first we thought he was the only one who would stay home, but as they each came to that age, they all chose to stay home. We knew families who were doing school at home and families who were unschoolers, and lots of families who were in school, of course. And my husband and I thought they would like school we had, but they opted for this other arrangement, which involves creating an atmosphere in which there's learning all the time, where our whole lives were involved in exploration and play and discussion and looking things up. And it's not, as many people characterize it, the children the children deciding what to study or deciding what to learn. It's that the parents create this atmosphere where there's always learning.
Sandra, can I ask you, because some of the viewers at home are probably quite curious now, you've got three kids in their 20s, what do they all do?
The oldest one has worked for 14 years and he's only 27. He'll be 28. He got a job at a gaming store when he was 14, and that led indirectly and directly to his working at Blizzard Entertainment, where they do World of Warcraft, and he's worked there for 7 years. They paid for him to move to Texas. The other two are younger. One is going to college, to university, part-time and working full-time at Target. He worked a temporary job and they asked him to work full-time. He was the only one of their Christmas crew that they invited to work full-time. And so he's doing that while he's going to school. And the youngest is helping organize small punk shows, and she travels a lot. She's been an au pair for a couple of families, Canada and England, and she's going to India this fall just for a vacation for 10 weeks. She works at a store, but she chose a store that will take her back after travel. So they're all pretty good at arranging to do more than one thing at a time. My oldest, too, while he was still working at the gaming store, he used to teach karate.
Well, they sound very...
The question about preparation for the real world is that they are in the real world.
Well, that's exactly right. Well, David, let me bring you into this junction now. You think that children need to be taught by professionals at every age, don't you?
Absolutely. The most difficult thing for a child to ever learn to do is to read and to do mathematics. We're not programmed to learn to do that, and it needs to be in the hands of highly qualified professionals, and we call them teachers. We don't self-medicate, we don't go online and try and self-diagnose, and if we do, we're being very foolish. So children need to be in an environment where they're going to be encouraged and nurtured by professionals and their teachers. Now, I've read a lot about unschooling, and in fact, when I did my teacher education course myself, I read the original books by John Holt, and I was very impressed with what he was saying about the school system at that time in the 1970s and early 80s. But education has now changed in our schools, and we've adopted those very important new approaches to which we call immersive learning, and the very best teaching that we see in our schools today is based on those fundamental principles that we let the child lead the learning.
Sandra, I want to talk to you about this now. When you're unschooling your kids at home, or you're teaching them really, that puts a lot of pressure on the parents to inspire them with ideas, to educate them, even if that is in their own time. Tell us what you had to do with that.
Well, I taught them in the way that I was trained. When I studied education, they said the schools will change, but they didn't. In experimental schools, in laboratory schools, a lot of these things were proven, and it works very, very well in a family. For someone to say that a child can't learn to read without being taught is false, because all of my children did. I know personally dozens of people who learned to read without being taught. Some of them learned to read at 2 or 3 and then went on to school. I had them live in an enriched environment. They were surrounded by language, by words, by text, and they did pick it up. And they've picked up mathematics, and I have many stories, not just about my family, but many families on my website, of how children learned things that are higher mathematics.
Well, Sandra, that's an interesting
in
point you were
natural
making
ways,
about the
playing
reading.
games.
It was an interesting point what you're making about the reading thing, because last night in 60 Minutes, and David, I wanted to talk to you about this as well, is that we saw a young man who, at 20 years of age, couldn't read, couldn't write. I mean, he just had no skills like that, and he was 20, but yet then again, a brother in the same family got a PhD. So, you know, what's your response to something like that?
Which of us?
David, please.
Well, certainly. Thanks, David. Look, we hear only about the success stories, and it was tragic to see a young man at the age of 20 not being able to read or do mathematics from the same family. And his mother was actually a teacher as well. And if she couldn't teach her own son to read and write, then something wrong is going on there. Now, that family only unschooled their children to the age of 13. They then went off to either regular schools or did courses. And so, of course, one can get into university and do a tertiary degree in this country, in Australia, through alternative means, through adult entry. I need to contradict Sandra about the education system. I know that the education system in the United States is a very, very poor one. But here in Australia, we are a leading education system in the world. And people look to Australian schools and Australian education as leaders in this field. And children cannot learn to read by themselves. You cannot learn to read in isolation. Someone has to be there helping you to explain, to decode, to enable that comprehension, that early comprehension to begin. Left on their own, on an island, a desert island, a person with a book cannot teach themselves to read.
Oh, well, you know, Sandra, it's an interesting point, but, you know, your point was that you were an educator. You were taught how to educate your kids at home. So I don't want to poo-poo this completely. There's going to be a lot of people online who are going to have a very passionate response today about this on our Facebook and Twitter. But tell me, if some people wanted to go this way, what's your, quick, 1 or 2 tips for teaching kids at home?
Don't rush into the decision. Take your time. Don't do anything you don't understand. There's free information available online. You don't have to pay anyone to help you learn about unschooling. All that information is there. You can join a group with local people who have done it, who are doing it, who can help you, who will give you all the resources you need. And my children all learned to read without being taught. They were never on a desert island. There are always people around them willing to help them, but we did not teach them to read. They learn.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your time today, Sandra. David, thank you too. We've heard both points of view now. Some of you out there watched 60 Minutes last night, and I want to know what you guys think at home. Is unschooling enough to set kids up in the real world? Head to our Facebook page or Twitter. Let us know your thoughts on this. Sonia?
Did you